The Port Podcast with Craig Bell Estabrooks.
Welcome to the latest edition of the Port Podcast. We've got two very exciting guests, MLAs that are very near in close proximity to the Port of St. John. We have the Honourable David Hickey, who's the MLA for St. John Harbour, and we have Kate Wilcott, the MLA for St. John West Lancaster. A little bit of a name change from what I'm used to from that riding, but really excited to have both of you on the podcast today to talk about a number of issues from kind of our growing port, our growing community, opportunities that we have for St. John, the province of Nouveau-Brunswick. You've been about a year, I believe, now into the mandate, so we can no longer call the Holt government the new government in New Brunswick. They are the established government now of a year. So I think we've got a lot of topics to cover today. But what we typically do on this podcast is go a little personal to start and talk about your journey and what led you to want, in both of your cases, wanting to run in last year's provincial election. So maybe we'll start with you, David. Talk a little bit about yourself and your past and what led you to that moment of deciding to get into provincial politics last fall.
Sure, yeah, thanks very much, Craig. The big thing for me was I'd spent 6 years on council and really saw a lot of the issues that were facing our community, my riding in particular in St. John Harbour, held at the province, and didn't see enough action around some of those things, in particular on housing. And now I get the honor of being the housing minister in the province, and really saw an ability to bring about that change as an MLA. That's why I put my name forward, and saw a vision that Susan Holt was presenting as the leader of the Liberal Party at the time, as one that really could shape a province that I could be proud of. And that's what brought me to that decision. I end an election a year ago next week.
Not an easy decision. Very, very difficult, as you know, having served in municipal politics. I've had the pleasure of being adjacent to politics for the last 10, 15 years. It's a tough life decision, but it's a rewarding one when you can see the impact you make for your community and the people that you serve. So I'm sure it's been a great first year. Yeah. So Kate, you and I have been able to interact a lot over the last probably decade plus through interaction and your different roles. Tell us a little bit about your journey, which led to you running last fall as well.
Oh wow! Well, I also worked. I worked for the City of St. John, so I wasn't an elected member of council as the minister was, but I worked closely with you on different committees as a staff person. So I had been the arts and culture coordinator for the city for 6 years in a very public-facing role. With that portfolio, working with, I started off in population growth, so working very much on the ground with different communities, with ethnocultural communities, a lot with newcomers, but also just working, I don't say just, but working within St. John and looking at how people live in the city, the cultural aspect of things. And before that, I had worked in community development. I was a teaching artist and a director and producer, and started a registered charity for young people. Did a lot of work with intergenerational programming with seniors and young people. And so my focus right back to when I was young was always serving the community and working in community development. And so what was interesting was I was part of the union that was on strike in 2023 with the city. And so that was very, everything that we do is a learning experience and opens our eyes to new paths and new journeys and new outlooks. And so when I was on strike, it gave me an opportunity to talk to people and my coworkers in a way that we wouldn't normally engage around the water cooler. And I was hearing from people that they were just, a lot of people were just feeling vulnerable and feeling that they were disconnected. And it wasn't from the city, it was from other levels of government, from the provincial government. People had a lot of issues with education and healthcare and affordability. And so soon after that, I actually got in touch with you and I asked if you knew who was running over on the west side for the Liberal Party, and and here we are now.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
Well, you'd be hard pressed to find a St. John family that didn't have some interaction with interaction.
Yeah, that's right.
You're a very successful group, and I know you touched a lot of families. So I think there's a lot of folks that are excited that you're in this current role now, knowing what your past experience has been. So let's dive into this. On the podcast, we've had an opportunity over the last couple of years to continue stories that are started maybe in an episode that previous. So as you are both well aware, I had the opportunity to have the Premier on stage to do a one-on-one at our Port Days conference, and we turned that into a podcast, and we've had lots of feedback on that. So maybe we'll start talking about some of the issues that were raised on stage that day with Premier Holt, and what we really focused on was New Brunswick's role in nation building. We've got a really shifting environment with global trade. We have a Prime Minister now with ambitious targets on trade diversification while maintaining the United States as a very large trading partner, and with their close proximity to our country, it'll be an important trading partner in perpetuity. However, we are looking at our coasts now, and we're looking at trade diversification. So New Brunswick can play a huge role in this. So I'd love to get kind of both of your thoughts on, what would you like to see New Brunswick accomplish with a greater focus on trade? And maybe trade diversification away from different traditional partners. Maybe start with you, David.
Yeah, it's a great question, Craig, and it tees up perfectly for what the port's role in that can be. And we've already started to see the impact of the trade war and of tariffs in this community. I mean, we as many other ports did, lost a Hapag-Lloyd line, right? And that impact is felt in this community in a very real way. And for us, that means how can we make sure that we are positioning the Port of St. John in particular, but the rest of the really natural assets that we have in this province to say, we want to be a very clear partner, not only in nation building, but in setting the tone for what the future of trade looks like in this country. And I think that we, as a provincial government, need to play a very clear leadership role in doing that and in setting that tone. Not only setting that tone in the province, but setting it across the country as to where and what the role of New Brunswick can be in that.
Yeah. It's interesting, Craig. I was at a conference with MLAs and MPs from across the country recently, a Commonwealth seminar conference, and we had Senator Joan Kingston present about tariffs and trade. And she, in her presentation, she was talking about I think it's 96.8% of, is that right? Of the trade that we do goes to the south?
Yeah, it definitely varies by commodity, but post NAFTA, kind of a number that you hear a lot is in that 75% range.
Right.
But some you're very much close to 100% of certain commodities.
Yeah, and
go south.
Yeah, and she was talking about southern New Brunswick in particular, and it was so eye-opening to the MLAs and the MPs from across the country, because oftentimes I think that they don't think of New Brunswick as being and in that conversation she was talking about the ports, she was talking about the industry that we have, especially here in southern New Brunswick, and I think that people weren't aware of how vital a piece of the machine we are in terms of trade within Canada. And
totally. Yeah. I would just add to that too. I think kind of the tariff discussion of 2025, but also the pandemic and supply chain constraints that happened in 2020, 21, and into 22, and really lasted longer than the pandemic itself, the bottlenecks that were created around the world. People now are aware that there is a supply chain to get their toothpaste into their into their home.
Yeah, exactly.
To get product that is vital. We're going to talk a little later in the podcast, I'm sure, about cold storage because we see that as one of the biggest opportunities for this region. But, the items that are in a temperature-controlled facility end up in people's homes.
Yeah.
And it is vital. And I think the awareness was not there because the public didn't have to worry about it. There were other pressing issues prior to the pandemic that we were all kind of talking about and that were top of mind. Now this is top of mind.
Right.
And I think you've both nailed that this is an opportunity for New Brunswick because we're perfectly positioned to be a supply chain solution in Beldoon and St. John, what Moncton's created with their industrial park and the Moncton Airport that is a thriving, trade route for a lot of time-sensitive cargo as well.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of cold storage built up there in Moncton as well. I think we're really well positioned.
And I'll add to that with, I think we are one of our incredible advantages that we have is you have the social license to do it, right? There's very few communities at the level that we do here in particular around the port to say the community is on side with the growth at Port St. John. They are, and across the province. They want to see success here because they know what that means for the community and they know the direct impact that it has on the city. But you'd be hard pressed to find other communities across the country that would have the social license that we do to be able to grow the port at the rate that we have been.
You're so right about that, and there's different theories that we've kind of talked about as to.
I think it's you.
Well, I don't know. No, thank you. But I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we know what a downturn looks like. And, I always, when I have a group in, and you guys have been on some of the tours we do, I go back 130, 140 years on some of these talks when we look at the St. John Harbour because we've had eras of extreme prosperity. If you look at the golden age of sail and shipbuilding and what we were able to do kind of post-fire or, pre-fire, post-Confederation, St. John was a major asset that was extremely important. And we've had periods of up, but we've also had a lot of down. And if we're being really honest, kind of the post-World War II period from a marine standpoint at the port has been more down than up. There have been glimmers of hope. We moved a lot of forest products at different times. We had an early container terminal put in place when containerization became the global kind of mechanism to do a lot of trade, but it hasn't been steady. And so what we've tried to create with the help of your government and others is infrastructure that's going to last a century. It is, there are ups and downs in the container shipping. You alluded to it. We go from, 5 weekly calls to 4, then we'll go to 6, down to 5. It's more like a heart rate monitor than a pure upward trend growth trajectory. But I think if we get the infrastructure right, we have the right partners, and we have the community backing us, like you mentioned, Minister, then that is the secret for I think longer term success.
And when you talk about the community backing you, the excitement that we saw, that I heard just from people in my constituency office and around the West Side, but also on social media, just when the cranes arrived. I don't want to say just when the cranes arrived, because that was a big deal. But when they arrived, I think that a lot of people would, if you talk about the port, they think of what's behind you right now, the cruise ships and things, and that's wonderful, and it's incredible for our community and economic development and everything. But then to see the cranes and for people to realize, we're part of that. We're part of what we're hearing about on the news. We want to support what we have here, and also the amount of work that the port does in the community as well, just supporting young people and Harbor Lights programs and things like that. There is definitely that connection.
I think it's important for all partners to give back to the community you're in. I mean, to get that license or support, it's not a one-way transaction. Yes, if you create good economic activity, there's jobs that can help families sustain themselves, but you also want to give back for those that may not be directly employed that are impacted by the activity that we have here. So a year in. I want to start like what
almost
what
a year.
Has the first almost the first year been like? The premier had said 2 prime ministers, 2 U.S. presidents. This wasn't just in the first few months.
Right.
So now that you're a year into it, from your perspective, you are boots on the ground, right in the heart of St. John. What has the first year as an MLA been like?
I often say it's the most joyous and the most heartbreaking job. Being a constituency MLA. we have a very, very active constituency office. My assistant has often 25, 30 people coming in through the door each day. It's, people come in and they share their heartache, they share their worry. Oftentimes if people are taking that step to walk through the door and sit down, they're sharing a lot. But what's wonderful is that we can actually help people. We can, oftentimes Gina, my assistant, will call your assistant and say, somebody needs some help with housing, or somebody, I can get on the phone and talk to Dr. Dornan's assistant to talk about healthcare. We're very connected. We're very accessible to the community and to each other. And so for me, I love problem solving. I love advocating for people. And I find that that's exactly what I do when I'm here in St. John and when I'm in Fredericton as well. But no, there's a lot of people out there that are hurting. There's a lot of people out there that are worried about themselves and their families, their children, adult children as well. But what the joyous side of things is that we actually are able to make change and to help, and we're able to bring their stories back to Fredericton, and that's what will inform decisions that are made in the legislature. Yeah.
A former MLA told me once that constituency work is often kind of the last line of hope for some of these folks.
Exactly.
They've exhausted everything else, and when they come in, they really need some direction because they've hit a roadblock that has become insurmountable in their life,
100%.
And they don't walk into that office for the sake of it. They really need your support and your empathy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for the most part, there is a solution. And if there isn't a solution, we'll find one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about your first year, David?
It's hard to believe a year we've been a year. Every February morning at 6 a.m. when Colin picks me up and we head to Fredericton, they've gone by pretty fast. But it's to say, continue just the tremendous opportunity that we have to get stuff done and to get more done faster, right? I mean, St. Johners gave us an incredible opportunity and a really strong mandate in this region with 6 of us around the table, 5 of us around the cabinet table, a really strong voice for this community for the first time in a while, I would say, to really make sure that we can deliver on some big projects and to make sure that voice is heard and felt. And I feel like it is around that table, and it's been a year of making sure that we can find that alignment with our colleagues across the province to make sure that is the real focus. And for me to deliver as much housing as possible, not only for this community, but for everyone in the province. What I would have said, I think this conversation has obviously changed a lot in the last year about what I thought we would be talking about in a year versus what we are now. And I think the Premier characterized it well in saying, 2 prime ministers, two presidents, and, I don't think we thought we would be talking about tariffs at this point.
No.
But I think we still have a tremendous opportunity here to shape New Brunswick's place in that conversation. The port is incredibly well positioned to make sure that we can shape that narrative across the province and across the country as to what that looks like here. And what I'll say a year in is it continues to be our job to deliver that for this community. At least a year in, we know where our offices are, and we know a little bit more about how exactly to make sure that we can deliver as much as possible for the community.
Well, I want to pick up on that. So obviously time, we feel that pressure from the port standpoint as well. It does take time when you're in a new role, not only to adjust, but to just understand how you navigate. If you were in the corporate world or in a different world, it's a given that you need transition time and you need to be onboarded, and there's all sorts of corporate lingo that people use, but it's really granting someone the leeway and the latitude to be new for a little while. Politicians don't get that, kind of from in my experience, from day one, the expectations are high. So how do you personally balance high expectations, but then probably equally high pressure that you put on yourselves to deliver your priorities to, kind of to match the backgrounds that you both brought to the table?
I think I would say it was mid-December when my husband said to me, you have to figure out a way to balance this. And what it is like we said, or like I said, people are coming in and sharing stories, and they're tough. They're tough. And sometimes there's a quick turnaround time. Sometimes there's a program that Gina can set them up with somebody, and there's help out there. Other times there is going to be more work that goes into it, more strategic work. And these are people that, these are my neighbors that are coming in. These are people that I don't just see in my office, but I see at Sobeys, or I'll see at Tim Hortons at Sims Corner. And so there is definitely a huge sense of responsibility. And so that was, and you experience it as well, just walking down the street and people talking to you as well. But it's so important, and that balance is, we can find balance. We have each other, and that's one of the,
yes.
our St. John caucus is very, we've all become very supportive with each other. Yeah. And then the other thing we were saying, when you mentioned the idea of you have to hit the ground running, there isn't really a lot of onboarding. We're able to, I find that the MLAs and the ministers that have been in government are very gracious with their time to, take 5 minutes and sit down and talk, give us the, just some a bit of a roadmap, and to support us in that way as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we started this job and then a stopwatch started, and we just have a clock behind us of, counting down. We've got 3 years left to say, how do we get as much done as possible? And I think our attitude from day one is, how do we get as much shit done as we possibly can? And we need to use this opportunity that St. Johners have given us to make sure that we can deliver. And, if I've already said it 100 times here, but our ability to do that is, like Kate said, is because we have a great team. I'll be honest, I have no work-life balance, but that's okay, because we're passionate about our work and we want to deliver, and I get fulfillment from being able to do more for this community. And I go home and talk about work, and I see Kate and talk about work. I go for a run and think about work, right? But that's okay, because I get to do a job that is really exciting and really unique, and not a lot of people get the opportunity that we have to be able to speak up for the people in our constituencies, to be able to, in my case, deliver on a crisis that is impacting every community across the country in housing, to be able to try and find and deliver on what the New Brunswick solution is. So, yeah, the learning curve is steep. The schedule in particular is a difficult one to catch up on. And it does catch up to you, right? We have to take our moments, but we have a really strong team, and we'll take a break either in 3 years or in 7 years.
There you go. I love it. So you both talked a little bit about projects and things that are near and dear to you. What are some of the pressing ones? I know housing is a huge portfolio. You've talked extensively. You can use that as an example, or if you've got something else. But what are kind of the one or two things that are really top of mind as we kind of look at wrapping up 2025 and going into 2026? So a little more short term. What are the things that you're really working on that you think the community could get excited around?
Yeah, well, maybe I can start, and just I won't talk. I'll set the housing ones aside for now, because I think I talk ad nauseum about that, and there's a lot of other stuff.
It's important.
Absolutely. I profoundly believe that housing is and can be our biggest solution to solving a lot of the majority of the problems in this community. If we can have a solid foundation of safe, affordable, and community housing in this province, then we can do a lot of stuff, and I think that can be our nation building project. But what I'll say is, I think there's a few pretty important projects that I think we have the opportunity to deliver for the community. I know one of the big ones for me is right here in St. John Harbour is making sure we deliver on getting our school finished.
And the ground prep, I'm pointing as if someone can see an image.
Yeah.
It looks incredible.
Yeah.
I live right there. It's unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah, it's exciting to watch. We know now that shovels are in the ground, it's actually going to happen. And there's a commitment for the community hub space that we've been looking for a while. The other one is making sure we see a little more work done at the museum, something that's been a little slower coming together, but will be such a tremendous project for Southern New Brunswick. The other big one that I look to is projects like the St. John Theatre Company's Courthouse project. Making sure that we can deliver on that and get that across the line is huge in setting up St. John from a livability perspective to make sure that we have that arts and culture center that people are looking for in a growing city.
Totally. I'm going to be selfish here for a second and make it about the port, even though there are two projects that are not related to the port: the museum and what Stephen Tobias is doing at the theater company will add such vibrancy for cruise passengers. Oh, yeah. The more assets, we've had some of the best feedback in my entire 14 years this year. 2025 has been a banner year for how much cruise passengers are enjoying St. John.
Oh, good.
And I think it's because of the state of Water Street and all the work that went in when you were a councillor, David, minister, when a lot of that was occurring, and that vibrancy has added a ton. Efforts with the city market revitalization, it's turned a corner post-COVID with the amount of traffic that we see in there. I firmly believe if you're going to market yourself as the great historic center that we are, you need to have one of the best museums in the country. And equally same on the theater front. We've got the Imperial, we've got the BMO Theater, we've got youth that have been involved in some of the best programming in the country. But if you want to take it to the next level, you need that center of excellence in one of the most historically significant buildings in Canada. That needs to be revitalized. So
right. And we have so much potential in this community, and it's hard to remind folks of that narrative, because there's no question we have massive challenge in this community, whether it's stepping up and showing leadership around housing and homelessness and the crisis that we're feeling in our community. There's massive challenge there. We need to make sure that we ground ourselves in a narrative that says we can do this, we're going to get out of it, government's going to show vision on that. At the same time, we need to be continuing to shape, and thanks to the port for even doing things like this that help shape that narrative, to say there are some incredibly positive things happening in this community. We all want to get behind it, and we're all going to grab an oar to make sure that the St. John narrative is one of positivity, is one of growth, and is one of imagine what is possible.
Yeah, if you were, you guys live through a lens where everything, not everything, but most things are on camera, or you're doing things like we're doing right now. If you had a camera on a boardroom of a corporation, they're talking about all the extreme opportunities and the extreme challenges. And it's continually, a pendulum. And at the end of the day, you hope that the good outweighs the bad and that you can keep thriving and keep growing. You don't have that luxury, though, of what maybe a corporate boardroom would have about it being private and those conversations being private. So it becomes very public when there's a negative thing happen. It becomes very public when a positive thing happens. And my opinion is it's very difficult for people, especially where there's not a lot of media platforms anymore in New Brunswick, to weigh the magnitude of what's really positive and what's a challenge that needs to be fought.
As governments, how do you shape narrative? Like, there used to be a day when, the prime minister would go to a podium, or the premier would go to a podium and say, we're doing this, 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 and this. And it would be on every front page of every paper and in every outlet, and everyone would read it the next morning.
Yeah, I even go back to the Roosevelt Cottage in Campobello. When FDR would have a radio broadcast, the nation would sit and wait around a fire stove and a radio to hear what was coming. Whether it was the Great Depression, the New Deal, the outbreak of World War II. I don't know how you guys get a message out now. There's so much content just continually pushed, and algorithms that are really pushing a narrative that you may already believe, and you become more entrenched in. It is a challenge.
I either start tweeting like Trump or get some Crown Royal and I'll start dumping it out at podiums. One or the other. I don't know what the other. I don't know what the
I
other
don't think
solution
I'll opt for either of those. but it's interesting because it's a double-edged sword. But because when you talk about algorithms and you talk about the news that's coming in, we also have that much more of a connection with people and their opinions and their narratives and the problems that they're facing through social media. And so that's a way of keeping us on track and on task, but at the same time, I could sit down at the end of the day and based on the contact what I've seen on social media, especially about the west side of the city, there could be, 35 different very, very pressing public things that we would have to deal with, and then I have to weigh them and see, okay, well, that one was very loud, but it's only one person talking about it, and
right. And that's why we started this podcast as a port to have that more nuanced conversation, because again, while we just talked about algorithms maybe in a challenging light, the benefits that you mentioned of social media, the awareness that an individual can put on an issue that they would not have been able to get a spotlight on 25 years ago is incredible.
Yeah.
And it adds to the vibrancy of the modern world we live in.
Yeah.
But it's a
Yeah, and I just talked to the premier about this yesterday, and he said, like, I bumped into someone and they're like, "Oh, we never hear from you anymore." I'm like, like, how do you get a radio broadcast under a rock?
I know.
Like, but just to say, like, media is so fragmented.
It is
it's so difficult to get through to people in a way that's meaningful, in a way that people listen to, because there's so much at them all the time.
Yeah, I think that's a great one for leadership in general, because no matter what company you're in, if you're in kind of a leadership position, more communication is always going to be something someone asks of you, and it's one of those ones you keep striving for, but it's a goal that's not attainable. I think you just do your best and and really try to be as proactive as possible.
Okay, but we were talking about projects, and I held one off for Kate because I want to get back to projects, and I waited to toss one over to Kate because she's been such a huge champion of what I'm calling St. John's Nation Building Project.
That's right. That's what I call it as well. Yeah. Which you happen to be talking. Well, the corner formerly known as Sims Corner is what I call it.
Yes. Let's get into that.
Well, I mean, and it's interesting because I also, I spoke about it in a member statement right before the break, that it's it was almost like the elephant in the room, at least for where I sit over on the other side of the bridge. Yeah. I often don't refer to it as Sims Corner anymore, because I always say, that when the Sims Brush Factory was there, and it was such a huge part of our community, and they did such great work, and even when after it closed, the building still being there, it was really very much part of that, I hate to say nostalgic, but the nostalgic landscape of the West Side. But now everyone says it with gritted teeth, and so I always say, let's not call it Sims Corner, because that's not paying good homage to the legacy of the Sims factory and the family and what they did. Yeah. But is that what you were referring to, the minister? Yes.
Dead on.
The way I like to frame up Sims Corner for people that are not from St. John and in the supply chain world. So in the rail lines and the container lines and different cargo owners, maybe from Ontario, that utilize the Port of St. John, but don't really have a great understanding of all the geography that we have, because nor do I have a great understanding of the geography that they have in Ontario. But the way I like to describe Sims Corner, take out what it looks like and look at what happens there from a supply chain standpoint. You are connected into a very busy, growing, thriving container port that is multi-purpose, that handles other products like break bulk that goes to the mills. So very important asset there. You connect into 3 Class 1 railways through a short line at Sims Corner. So if your cargo is going on the CN rail, it's going across the Reversing Falls Bridge after it hits Sims Corner and is going over to the east and through the CN rail network. You go through the CP rail network and the CSX, which is a major U.S. giant, through the Dever Road facility and out the west side and further into central Canada and the U.S. You have you have DP World, a major global operator with over 80 ports around the world. That's just a few kilometers, down. That's driving a lot of Canada's supply chain solutions. They're going to be the new operator at Contrecoeur, which is another nation building project in the province of Quebec and just outside of Montreal. So Sims Corner has this incredible importance to massive companies and individuals that may not even know it exists, but it poses a huge challenge for locals that are trying to just get to their commute, and they're trying to, make a living, whether at the port or in other jobs. So, I think we've all agreed that we collectively owe it to nation building, supply chain, citizens, tourists,
Right.
everyone that uses it, that we get a solution that makes sense for absolutely everyone, pedestrians, cyclists, everyone.
100%. I mean, it's I go back and look at photos of it from 120 years ago, and it was an important intersection at that time.
Yeah.
Nobody knew how much, hindsight is 2020, of course, but nobody knew how much it was going to grow up and how important it was going to be. But it's so vital, and nobody disputes that. Nobody who talks to me about it disputes the fact that it's not as important as it is in terms of trade and the port and rail lines and everything. It's just trying to figure out how to have that ecosystem so that everybody, like you said, everybody's able to use it. And I remember, I think it was 20 years ago, I just moved back to St. John from Nova Scotia, and CBC did a story about Sims Corner. And the reporters stood in the middle and talked about the buses doing the U-turns, and a train's coming through, and now the kids are trying to cross the street to get from one, across the intersection. And it was comical at the time. But now with the amount of traffic of all kinds going through, we gotta figure out what to do. And like you said, fix it, but do it with the respect that has to be shown to all of the different players.
Well, it's back to the time conversation we had.
Exactly.
I think all of us would love to wave a magic wand and have the solution, but the engineers and people that can do traffic studies beyond my capabilities have to look at this so that it makes sure it works for everyone.
Right.
It works just as well for the citizens that are using it as it does for the rail line.
Right.
Everyone's got to be happy with the
100%.
solution. It's going to take some time.
Yeah.
We got to come up with the right plan.
Yeah.
And what's becoming clear, and has been clear for the port for a long time, but is becoming clear to those of us in community, is our port is only as good as our ability to get stuff out of it. Sims Corner is an important part of that, and it's our job to make sure that we advocate to our colleagues and push like hell to make sure that we can deliver the provincial part of that, and then make sure that we get our colleagues in the federal level and municipal level to deliver the same. It's an uphill battle when you've got competing projects across the province, when you've got a government with limited funds and a province with a budget narrative that says if you don't balance it, you're not doing your job, even while the Conservatives in Nova Scotia blast past our deficit numbers like it was nobody's business, right? So, but it's to say other governments across the province, across the country, other provincial governments are making those investments in their community. Yep. They are making the Sims Corner investments, and they're doing it at the expense of their deficit. Yeah. Everybody else is doing it. It's not to say that we should blindly jump in and do it, but what it is to say is the longer we delay, the faster Halifax builds. Yeah. The longer we delay, the faster Montreal figures out how to continue to build their trade industry. We've got to step up to the plate and make sure that we can deliver Sims Corner. Yeah. I think our nation building from St. John is making sure we can deliver Sims Corner and expand on what already is and what the potential is of our port.
Yeah, rail flow, and I don't want to bore over all the guests, but rail fluidity that you mentioned is crucial. Same with truck, but we're mostly serviced by rail right now with where our growth's coming from. And anecdotally, when people stop me on the street, not nearly as frequently as you guys get stopped, by the way, and you hear something positive,
I just send people to you now.
Yeah, look at all the containers when I drove up across. That gives me great anxiety, because the more containers that pile up there mean they're not getting off the dock. We actually track dwell, which is day on dock, as a metric, and it needs to be as low as possible. So the industry standard, you got to try to get down to 3 or less. Yeah. 3 to 5 is acceptable. Above 5, you start paying attention. Fluidity is absolutely crucial to our gateway. So So I have time for one more question. So I had a professor once that made me do this, and I've never asked this on the podcast, so I'm going to try it out on you guys.
Okay.
I had a professor that made me do this, and he made us sit there at the end of a class and take 30 minutes, and we all wrote a letter to ourselves 5 years from now, and he kept those letters and then mailed them to us, so that we had
isn't that cool?
In 5 years. So he mailed them, and you had to, and it really caused you an opportunity to reflect on what you thought the next 5 years is going to be like. So your mandate's obviously 3 years, but I'm going to give you the five-year perspective that I had. What would a future version of yourself be really proud of that you had, that you're currently working on and want to achieve as in your time as MLA?
You'll be so old in 5 years, David.
I know. Oh my God, I know.
No, you won't. I will be.
You're retiring.
Yeah.
35.
5 years from now, let me see. Well, obviously the conversation about Sims Corner. Hopefully we will be at some place where we can see a future of an ecosystem that works. I think that it's, oh my goodness, it's just basically trying to ease the worry and the burden on the people. And doing that through working with my colleagues in all of the different departments. If we can, I would love, if I'm speaking specifically to my own area of the West Side, we need seniors housing over there. I hear that all the time from people. Seniors housing to free up some of the homes that people are in for younger families. So if we can see something like that built, it would be fantastic.
It's a good opportunity to lobby for it.
There you go. Yeah, well, hint, hint. Also, there's a lot of people asking about collaborative care clinics over there. So I'd love to see that happening. And just social programs that are there so that people feel a lot more peace of mind when it comes to things.
I love that.
St. Johners were really good at identifying what the problem is. Mm-hmm. The problem is we're not always great at connecting the dots and making sure we're all on board to getting the solution delivered. So I hope that a lot of what we're talking about in 5 years, a lot of what we're talking about today is not what we're talking about in 5 years. I guess I'll try and break it up and say, the Premier has made it very clear as to what I will look like in 5 years, and because she's laid out the KPIs that I'm being held to, right, and my job are on housing. And those are pretty straightforward. Cut chronic, the numbers are straightforward. The path to get there is difficult, but cut chronic homelessness by 40% in community. Build 30,000 new homes, and do the same in construction of community and affordable housing. So to date, I'm really proud of some of the work that we've done, whether it being a rent cap, making sure that we delivered the single largest piece of tenant protection legislation, or things like eliminating 15% HST on new multi-unit construction. So it's delivering projects like Fundy Key behind us, which is being built because we were able to remove the HST, make the math work, and we've got an incredible developer in the Fundy Harbor Group doing that work. I hope in 5 years that we see the fruit of the labor that we've put in, and we really see the vision start to be clearly laid out and delivered for what this community can look like and what the tremendous potential we have here can start to take shape. Kate, we just talked about Sims Corner. Shovels in the ground, going at Sims Corner to make sure that we can get it delivered. Making sure that we have, the new school open at the time, or new museum open at the time, Fundy Key open, 99 King open. Really start to see the vision of this community, of the city, taking shape with clarity. That's that's a success for me. That's what I'd write in that letter. Maybe I'll write one to you and you can
I
mail
love
it
it.
to me.
I'll mail it to you whenever you want. Excellent. Well, thank you both so much for taking your time. I know that you're incredibly busy. You donated us a lot of your insights, your vision, and your passion. I think we're all looking forward to what the future holds for St. John and New Brunswick, and you two are going to play a huge role in that. So thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having us, Craig.
Thanks, Craig.
Yeah.